You picked up your phone 40 minutes ago. You told yourself it would be 5. You didn't decide to keep scrolling. Something else decided for you. And here's the part that should actually unsettle you. The people who built the system that's doing this to you right now, they didn't invent it. They copied it. From Rome. Almost exactly. And a Roman writer wrote the warning label 2,000 years before anyone needed it. Nobody read it. Let's name the thing everyone in tech already knows and rarely says out loud. Every major platform you use was engineered by people who studied psychology, not just code. Infinite scroll has no natural stopping point on purpose. Notifications are timed with variable rewards, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Outrage spreads faster than calm information because outrage keeps you watching longer. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's published, well-documented product design. Former platform engineers have said it in interviews, on the record. But here's the question nobody in tech journalism seems to ask. Is this actually a new invention of Silicon Valley? Or did someone else figure this out first and just not have an app to do it with? Around 100 AD, a Roman satirist named Juvenal wrote a line that's survived 2,000 years, mostly because it's brutally accurate. Panem et circenses. Bread and circuses. He wasn't describing food and entertainment as a nice perk of Roman life. He was describing a diagnosis. Juvenal was watching the Roman public, a population that once cared deeply about politics, military command, who governed them, quietly stop caring about any of it. Because the state had figured out something simpler than governing well. Keep people fed. Keep people entertained. And they'll stop asking what you're doing with actual power. That's not a metaphor. That was a literal functioning strategy of the Roman state, and it worked for centuries. Here's where it gets specific, because vague history claims are boring. Let's look at the actual system. The grain dole, the annona, was a free or heavily subsidized distribution of grain to Roman citizens, funded by the state. At its peak, it fed roughly 200,000 people in the city of Rome. That's not charity. That's infrastructure, built specifically to keep the population stable and dependent. Now add the circuses. Public games, gladiatorial combat, chariot races, weren't occasional treats. Roman calendars had well over 100 days a year dedicated to public games and festivals by the height of the empire. Emperors didn't fund this out of generosity. They funded it because a distracted, entertained population doesn't organize, doesn't revolt, doesn't ask hard questions about currency debasement, military failures, or who's actually making decisions in the Senate. Sound familiar yet? Let's be precise about the comparison, because a lazy version of this video would just say, algorithms are the new circuses, and move on. That's not good enough. Here's the actual structural parallel. Rome had two systems, one for basic material needs, one for psychological distraction. Modern platforms fused both into a single feed. Your phone gives you information, connection, and validation, the digital version of bread, wrapped inside a stream designed like the arena. Constant spectacle, constant stakes, constant next thing. The Colosseum had a fixed schedule. You showed up, watched, went home. Your phone has no schedule. No stopping point, no moment where the games officially end for the day. Rome's spectacle was a scheduled ritual. Yours is an unscheduled addiction. That's not an improvement. That's the same mechanism with the safety switch removed. Here's where most ancient Rome parallels modern life content stops. It notices the pattern and calls it a day. We're not doing that. Ask the actual investigative question: who benefited, and how did they measure success? In Rome, the answer was straightforward. Emperors who staged the most lavish games often did so specifically during moments of political vulnerability. After military defeats, during succession disputes, when the treasury was strained. The spectacle wasn't random generosity. It was timed. It was strategic. Distraction as damage control. Now look at modern platforms. Engagement isn't measured in applause in an arena. It's measured in watch time, session length, ad impressions. The metric changed. The incentive didn't. A system that profits from your attention will always be structurally motivated to keep you distracted, regardless of whether a human being consciously decided, let's pacify the public. Rome needed intention. Modern platforms don't even need that. The profit motive does the work automatically. That's arguably worse. Rome's distraction had an author. Yours might not need one. Now, a fair investigative piece has to test its own thesis. So let's stress it. Is this comparison too clean? Too convenient? Historians will rightly point out that bread and circuses wasn't the only force holding the Roman state together. There was military loyalty, patronage networks, religious authority, brute force. Reducing Rome's stability to they had good snacks and violent sports oversimplifies a genuinely complex political system. That's a legitimate correction and worth sitting with. Bread and circuses wasn't the entire foundation. It was one load-bearing pillar among several. But here's why the comparison still holds up under scrutiny. Juvenal wasn't writing a comprehensive political science thesis. He was making an observation about where public attention had gone, and that observation is exactly what should worry you about your own feed. The mechanism doesn't need to be the whole system to be a real one. So what do you do with this? Not delete your apps and move to the woods. That's not realistic, and frankly, it's not even the point. The Roman public didn't have the option to opt out of bread and circuses either. The system was built into the infrastructure of daily life, same as yours is now. The point is smaller and more useful. Naming the mechanism breaks part of its power. When Juvenal wrote that line, he wasn't offering Romans an escape plan. He was offering them clarity. He was saying, notice what's happening to your attention, and notice who benefits from you not noticing. That's the whole toolkit. Not abstinence. Attention to your own attention. If you've ever played a game with a limited resource, mana, stamina, a hunger meter, you already understand the mechanic intuitively. Your attention is the resource. The feed is designed to drain it as slowly and pleasantly as possible so you don't notice the bar emptying. Rome's citizens had a name for the system doing that to them. You mostly don't. That asymmetry is worth sitting with. Here's the twist most videos on this topic get wrong, and it's the one thing that separates a shallow parallel from a real insight. This isn't a story about Rome falling because of distraction, and it's not a warning that we're doomed the same way. That framing is lazy, and it's historically inaccurate. Rome's decline took centuries and involved currency collapse, military overextension, administrative fragmentation, and dozens of other factors that have nothing to do with gladiator games. The real insight is this: Bread and Circuses isn't a story about one civilization's mistake. It's a story about a recurring design pattern. Anywhere